Have you ever found yourself plagued by the question of his fidelity, wondering why, if he is straying, he simply refuses to depart? Why would a man actively betray your trust, yet simultaneously refuse to release his grip on you? You are not fabricating this paradox, nor are you navigating it in isolation. Countless women remain trapped in this quiet bewilderment, ripped apart by the conflict between their observations, their intuition, and his persistent assurances. You incessantly query yourself. If fidelity is not his priority, why does he remain? If his desire lies elsewhere, why does he not simply walk away? If he continuously fractures the foundation you built, why does he cling to the wreckage? However, the reality driving this conduct is far from straightforward. It is a complex tapestry woven from psychology, raw emotion, fear, fragile ego, and even biological imperatives. Unless you grasp the profound forces dictating this pattern, you will continue to shoulder the blame for a decision he is too cowardly to execute. The reality is that some men exist within a state of perpetual internal conflict. They desire the grounding of stability while simultaneously craving the spark of excitement. They seek the solace of profound love, but chase the intoxicating rush of novel desire, clinging to the safety of the known while desperately grasping for the adrenaline of the unknown. And this conflict isn't about morality. It's not even fully about desire. It's about the very nature of human psyche, the part of a man that feels divided between instinct and responsibility, between the ego and the self. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that is exactly what many men never do. They never confront the part of themselves that wants to feel powerful, admired, irresistible. They never confront the insecurity that drives them to seek validation outside the relationship. Instead, they live split in half, pretending that both sides can coexist without destruction. A man who cheats but refuses to leave is a man who has not made a real choice. He is indulging in the illusion that he can live two lives at once. The thrill of a new experience gives him a rush, a temporary sense of power, novelty, excitement. But when that rush fades, he retreats back to the only place he feels truly known, the only place he feels understood, the only place he feels safe. This back-and-forth cycle is not random. It is not meaningless. It is not accidental. It is a pattern he clings to because it gives him a false sense of invincibility, the ability to have the emotional security of a loyal partner while indulging in the ego-driven pleasures of infidelity, makes him feel as though he never has to sacrifice anything. He convinces himself that he can have both worlds, that the universe somehow owes him both. But here is the truth he will never say out loud. A man who truly respects himself makes a choice. He chooses commitment or he chooses freedom. But he does not pretend he can merge the two. A mature man understands that fulfillment doesn't come from fleeting highs. It comes from depth, discipline, and loyalty. It comes from choosing one woman, not because he lacks options, but because he recognizes the worth of what he has. Yet many men lack the self-awareness required to live with integrity. They make excuses, not decisions. It didn't mean anything. It was just a mistake. I love you, but I needed something different. These are not reasons. These are shields he uses to protect his ego from accountability. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is exactly what happens inside the mind of a man who cheats but stays. He is ruled by impulses he refuses to examine. He acts from insecurities he refuses to name. He fears losing you, yet he fears committing fully. He desires you deeply, yet he desires himself more. His behavior is not guided by love. It is guided by avoidance. Avoidance of choice. Avoidance of consequence. Avoidance of reflection. And as long as he can convince himself that he isn't hurting anyone too badly, he will continue. But this is where it becomes dangerous. Not just for him, for you. Every time he betrays you but refuses to leave, he reinforces a belief inside himself that he can have both, that your loyalty is guaranteed, that your forgiveness is endless, that your pain is a price he can afford to ignore. He becomes comfortable. He becomes entitled. He becomes convinced that you will stay no matter what he does. And comfort is the breeding ground for repeated betrayal. Comfort is the reason cycles never end, because it is not love that keeps him from leaving. It is the comfort of having both stability and excitement. The comfort of knowing you will remain, even when he strays. The comfort of knowing you love him enough to forgive what he refuses to stop. But here is the part he does not expect. The moment you see the truth of his contradictions, the moment you recognize the cycle for what it is, the entire foundation of his behavior cracks. Because the only reason he feels powerful enough to betray you is because he believes you will stay. Carl Jung said, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." This awakening is yours. The moment you stop asking, "Why won't he leave?" and start asking, "Why am I accepting this?" is the moment everything changes. A man who truly values a relationship does not jeopardize it for temporary pleasure. He does not seek validation at the expense of your trust. He does not live in contradiction while expecting you to remain whole. A man who cheats but refuses to leave has already chosen. He just hasn't chosen you. He has chosen his comfort, his ego, his impulses, his excitement, his avoidance. And you are left holding the weight of a decision he is too cowardly to make. But you do not have to carry what he refuses to confront. You do not have to settle for a man who wants both worlds. You do not have to trade your peace for his contradictions. And that realization, that shift, that moment of clarity is where your power begins. One of the most confusing contradictions in any relationship is when a man cheats yet refuses to leave. On the surface, it seems impossible to understand. Why would someone risk losing the very person they claim to love, yet fight so desperately to keep them? How can he betray you with his actions, while holding on to you with his words? The answer lies in two powerful forces that exist inside him at the same time: the fear of loss and the fear of commitment. He is trapped in a psychological tug-of-war between the two, torn between what he wants and what he cannot face. And you become the battlefield where those conflicts collide. On one hand, he fears losing you. He knows your value. He knows the depth of your love, the stability you offer, the way your presence grounds him in ways he cannot even articulate. You are his emotional anchor, the person he comes back to when the world becomes too heavy, the one he trusts to soothe the parts of himself he hides from everyone else. The idea of losing that is terrifying for him. Even if he won't admit it, losing you would mean losing the only place where he feels truly understood. The only place where he is seen beyond his ego and his flaws. The only place where his chaos meets calm. So he clings to you. He apologizes. He promises to change. He tells you that you are the one he loves and that the other situation meant nothing. And you believe him because your heart is honest, because you give love with depth, because you want to believe that loyalty still means something. But beneath his words, there is another fear at work: the fear of commitment. True commitment requires more than affection. It demands accountability, maturity, responsibility, self-control, and emotional discipline. It demands that he chooses one path fully and abandons all others. It requires him to face himself, to confront his insecurities, to grow beyond his comfort, to step into the kind of manhood that does not rely on validation from others. This is where he falters. because commitment strips away his illusion of freedom. It eliminates the thrill of being wanted by someone new. It forces him to sit with himself instead of escaping into the arms of distraction. For many men, this level of vulnerability is terrifying. It makes them feel exposed, trapped, responsible. So instead of stepping into that commitment, they run. Not always physically, but emotionally they cheat to escape the weight of responsibility, even while staying to avoid the fear of losing you. This is how the contradiction forms. He fears losing you more than he fears hurting you. Yet he fears committing fully more than he fears betraying you. He wants the comfort of stability without the sacrifice required to honor it. He wants the thrill of desire without the consequences that come with indulging in it. He wants you, but he also wants the version of himself that requires no accountability. This contradiction creates a painful loop. He stays because you are the foundation he needs. He cheats because he is running from the man he is supposed to become. And every time you forgive him, the cycle tightens around you both. He tells himself that you won't leave. He convinces himself that he hasn't done enough damage to lose you. He believes that as long as you are still there, still loving him, still giving him another chance, he can keep operating from a place of fear instead of a place of integrity. But here is the truth that shatters the illusion. A man who fears commitment more than he fears losing you does not love you the way you deserve to be loved. Because love without discipline is chaos. Love without loyalty is pain. Love without responsibility is abuse of the heart. Real love is a choice, a deliberate act of devotion, not a feeling that comes and goes depending on temptation. If he truly respected the relationship, he would confront his fears head-on. He would rise into accountability. He would do the internal work required to become emotionally reliable. He would recognize that loyalty is not a burden. It is a sign of emotional maturity. But when a man is driven by fear rather than integrity, he chooses neither option. He stays just enough to keep you from leaving, but never steps into commitment deeply enough to give you peace. He does the bare minimum, required to hold on to you while doing the maximum amount of damage without losing his comfort. And that leaves you stuck in a bond that drains you, confuses you, and forces you to question your worth. This is where your strength must rise, because you cannot fix a man who benefits from remaining broken. You cannot inspire commitment in a man who fears responsibility more than he fears hurting you. You cannot heal a man who uses your love as a cushion for his own immaturity. You cannot teach loyalty to someone who has never chosen to practice it. What you can do is recognize that his refusal to leave is not a sign of deep love. It is a sign of deep dependence. A dependence on your forgiveness. A dependence on your emotional stability. A dependence on the comfort you provide. But dependence is not love. Attachment is not devotion. Fear of losing you is not the same as choosing you. You deserve a love that stands firm without having to be tested. You deserve a man who is not torn between you and his impulses. You deserve someone whose fear of losing you is not his only motivation to stay, but whose commitment to growing with you is the foundation he lives by. Because staying with a man who is fighting two internal battles means you are always losing one of your own. You lose peace. You lose trust. You lose confidence. You lose pieces of yourself trying to hold on to someone who hasn't even chosen the version of himself you are sacrificing for. The truth is simple, but painful. You cannot build a future with a man who is still undecided about his present. A man who fears commitment more than he fears losing you is not protecting love. He is protecting himself. And you cannot keep shrinking, forgiving, and hoping your loyalty will inspire him to become who he refuses to become on his own. There comes a point where you must ask yourself the question he avoids. What kind of love do you actually want? Because he will not choose until you do. And the moment you choose yourself, the entire cycle begins to fall apart. Many people assume that when a man cheats, it means he has fallen out of love, that he wants something better, that he is searching for someone new to replace you. But that isn't always true. In fact, more often than not, the opposite is happening. Many men cheat not because they want to leave, but because they want to stay. It sounds twisted. It sounds contradictory. But it is a painful reality rooted in emotional dependency. These men do not just stay for love, they stay for comfort. They stay because you are the one who stabilizes them. You are the one who grounds them. You are the one who gives them something they do not know how to generate within themselves. Emotional security. You are his anchor, the one who listens when he falls apart, the one who reassures him when his ego cracks, the one who understands the shadows he hides from the world. And that is exactly why he refuses to leave. Even when he betrays you, he still needs you, not in a way that honors you, not in a way that uplifts the relationship, but in a way that serves his comfort. He needs the structure of your love while indulging in the irresponsibility of his impulses. He wants the nurturing he receives from you while chasing the stimulation he finds outside the relationship. He wants emotional stability from you and temporary excitement from someone else. Cheating for him is not about replacing you. It is about supplementing his life without losing the foundation you provide. He craves the thrill of something new, the validation, the attention, the ego boost. But he does not want to sacrifice the deep emotional benefits of what you give him. So he finds ways to have both. He seeks pleasure elsewhere while relying on you for his emotional home. And this is why the contradiction continues. He knows you're not the problem. He knows the other woman is not better. He knows what he has with you is more meaningful than anything he could ever build. In a moment of impulse, he cheats. Not because you lack anything, but because he lacks something within himself. But here is the truth he doesn't want to confront. If he truly valued the relationship, he would never put it at risk. A man who cares deeply does not jeopardize something irreplaceable for something temporary. He does not gamble with trust to soothe insecurity. He does not betray stability for a few moments of validation, because real love demands self-control. Real love demands discipline. Real love demands honoring what you already have instead of chasing what feeds the ego. Unfortunately, many women fall into the trap of believing that if he still comes home, if he still says he loves you, if he still shows you affection, then his betrayal must not be that serious. But need is not love. Dependence is not respect. A man can need you intensely while still disrespecting you completely. He can hold on to you tightly while still choosing behaviors that shatter your trust. He can cling to you emotionally while ignoring the damage he causes to your heart. As long as he knows you will always forgive, always try again, always rebuild what he breaks, he will not feel any urgency to change. His comfort becomes the fuel for his carelessness. His certainty that you will stay becomes the justification for his repeated betrayal. And the more he relies on you for emotional stability, the more reckless he becomes with your feelings. Because he has learned that you are the one place he can always return to, no matter how far he strays. This is where your role becomes crucial. Not because you are responsible for his choices, but because you are responsible for your boundaries. You must ask yourself, not why does he need me, but why does he deserve me? You must understand that healing him is not your job. Protecting his comfort is not your obligation. Sacrificing your peace to maintain his emotional balance is not your responsibility. Love should not feel like a burden placed on your shoulders. It should not feel like you are giving endlessly while receiving the bare minimum. It should not feel like you are the emotional foundation for someone who refuses to stand on their own. If he cheats but refuses to leave, it is not because he loves you in a deep, irreplaceable way. It is because he depends on you. He depends on your softness, your endurance, your forgiveness, your ability to absorb pain. He knows you will be there to hold what he breaks, even when he is the one doing the breaking. But dependence is not devotion. A man can depend on you emotionally while never rising to meet you with the loyalty you deserve. And the moment you see that clearly, everything changes. Because once you recognize that him staying is not proof of love, the illusion fades. Once you see that his refusal to leave is driven by need, not respect, the cycle loses its power. Once you understand that he is using your strength as a shield against his own emotional weakness, you stop blaming yourself for his choices. This clarity forces you to ask a deeper question. Is it love if you are the only one protecting it? Because real love is mutual. It is not a one-sided exchange where you provide emotional safety while he provides instability. It is not a dynamic where you give loyalty while he gives apologies. It is not a relationship where you offer depth while he offers excuses. Love without reciprocity is not love. It is emotional exploitation. And here is the truth he never expects you to realize. You are the source of the stability he clings to. You are the one keeping the relationship alive. You are the one doing the emotional labor. You are the one holding the weight. And when you understand the magnitude of your power, the entire dynamic shifts. Because the moment you stop being available, the moment you stop cushioning the consequences, the moment you stop being his emotional safety net, the cycle collapses. He cannot maintain this contradiction without your participation. You hold the key to the cycle ending. The question is whether you will continue to be the comfort he abuses or the boundary he cannot cross. Because at the end of the day, staying in a relationship where your love is taken for granted does not make you loyal. It makes you trapped. And you deserve more than being trapped in someone else's emotional dependency. You deserve to be chosen, not used. You deserve to be valued, not relied upon. You deserve love that honors you, not love that drains you. There comes a moment in every toxic cycle where you must decide. Am I going to keep tolerating this? Or am I going to reclaim my power? Because no matter how many excuses he makes, no matter how many apologies he repeats, no matter how many promises he breaks and then tries to repair with soft words, the final decision will never be his. It will always be yours. The power to break free from this cycle is not something he can take away. It is something you must claim for yourself. And that power lies in a simple truth. You always have a choice. When you are caught in a relationship where a man cheats but refuses to leave, it is easy to feel trapped. You feel emotionally tied to him. You remember the good moments, the history, the connection, the softness that existed before the betrayal poisoned everything. You fear what life will look like without him. You wonder if you will ever find someone who understands you the way he does, when he chooses to be present. You question whether you are expecting too much, whether love is supposed to hurt this much, whether leaving means failing. And because of all these emotions, you stay. You wait. You hope. You convince yourself that maybe this time things will be different. But deep down, beneath the fear, beneath the longing, beneath the hope you keep resurrecting, you know the truth. Nothing will change unless you make the choice to change it. The biggest lie women tell themselves in these situations is that they can't leave, that they are too attached, too invested, too intertwined. But staying is also a choice. Every time you forgive without consequence, every time you believe words over actions, every time you rationalize the red flags, you are making a choice to remain in a cycle that slowly erodes your self-worth. And the longer you stay, the more power he gains. Not because he is strong, but because you are giving your strength away. Because he learns that your boundaries are flexible, that your patience has no limit, that your heart will absorb the damage he inflicts, that your love will stretch itself to accommodate his betrayals. And the more he learns this, the less motivated he becomes to change. Why would he? If he can keep the security of your love and indulge in the thrill of his impulses, why would he ever give that up? But here is the shift that changes everything. The moment you decide that you deserve better, the entire dynamic collapses. When you finally say, "Enough," you break the illusion he has been hiding behind. When you finally choose yourself, you disrupt the comfort he has relied on. When you finally walk away, you show him the one thing he never expected: that you are not his emotional safety net, that you are not someone who will tolerate endless cycles of hurt, that your love is strong, but your boundaries are stronger. Leaving is not easy. It requires courage. It requires pain. It requires confronting fears that have kept you stuck. But the pain of leaving is temporary. The pain of staying lasts forever. Because if you stay in a state of waiting. Waiting for him to grow up. Waiting for him to change. Waiting for him to suddenly realize your worth. But a man who must lose you to recognize your value is a man who never deserved your presence to begin with. A man who needed to betray you to understand your importance is a man who was never prepared for the kind of love you gave him. You must understand something clearly. Real self-love is not just about affirmations or healing rituals. It is about boundaries. It is about saying, "I refuse to accept a version of love that diminishes me." It is about knowing that leaving a man who disrespects you is not weakness. It is power. It is awakening. It is a profound act of self-respect. Because love is not supposed to feel like a constant battle for dignity. Love is not supposed to make you feel small, insecure, or unworthy. Love is not supposed to be something you beg for. Love is supposed to be mutual, reciprocal, safe, true. And when you walk away from someone who refused to choose you, something incredible happens. You begin to rediscover yourself. You start to remember the woman you were before betrayal blurred your reflection. You regain your confidence, your clarity, your peace. You reconnect with the version of yourself who never questioned her worth. The version of yourself who understood that loyalty is not a luxury. It is the minimum. The version of yourself who believed she would be loved deeply without needing to suffer for it. You heal slowly, quietly, powerfully. And as you heal, you realize something even more important. You were never asking for too much. You were asking a man for more than he was capable of giving. You were trying to build a future with someone who had not even built himself. You were pouring love into someone who had no intention of pouring any back. You were settling for the bare minimum because you wanted the relationship to work more than he wanted to be worthy of it. But now the cycle breaks. Not because he decided to change, but because you decided to stop participating. Not because he suddenly gained clarity, but because you did. It is not because he surrendered his grip, but because you finally found the strength to release yours. When a woman walks away armed with self-respect, she leaves behind more than just the man. She abandons the version of herself that settled for less than she was worth. And this is the fragment of truth you must hold close to your heart. Regardless of his desperate attempts to retain you, his promises of repair, or how deeply he grasps for you once he realizes his control has evaporated. Your journey lies ahead, not behind. You are not departing to inflict punishment upon him. You are departing to secure your own survival. You are leaving to reclaim the pieces of your spirit that he took for granted. You are leaving to unlock the door to the love you were always destined to receive. A love that is steady, faithful, transparent, and respectful. It is the kind of love that cannot exist in the same space as betrayal. The kind that does not demand you suffer simply to feel valid. Because no matter how badly he wants to anchor you in his world, you always possess the ultimate power to walk away. And when you take that step, you do not just leave him in the distance. You leave behind the identity that believed pain was the necessary currency for love. That is the precise moment you become truly invincible.